JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley, and today I'm extremely delighted to welcome back Paul Jones. This is our second interview, because the last one we talked about his book, Standing Alone and a Flavour of Stories. But for this podcast, he's got some new books for you, and there are 4 that we're going to chat about. So as you can see, he's been a very busy author, everyone. But one of the books that we are going to highlight is his latest book, Just When You Thought You Knew, which he published earlier on this year. Paul was born in Pine Bluff, Jefferson County, a small town in the U.S. state of Arkansas. Today, he lives in Little Rock, the capital of the state of Arkansas, with his wife, Candace, to whom he's been married to for 16 years. He has 2 sons from a previous marriage, Justin and Jordan. And we have to, everybody, believe you me, we have to mention his goddaughter, Brentley, who I had the great privilege when we were putting this podcast together over the couple of Zoom meetings of chatting to her. And she's absolutely stunning, and I can see why he dotes on her. And I even had the great privilege of meeting his wife, Candace. There you go, everyone. Paul served in the US Armed Forces. He's worked as a law enforcement and prison officer. And if you ask his friends, he's an absolute, complete car nerd. Really is, everyone. He really is. He has a degree in criminal justice. And his time in the armed forces took him to countries like Germany, Honduras, just to name a few. Now, I've known Paul now for over 18 months. And when we do our chats and we communicate with each other, we have a little standard joke. And that is, Paul always ends his sentences or his comments with yes, sir. And he'll probably do it in this podcast. I've tried to encourage him not to, but I've given up, quite frankly, everybody, because he'll just do it. And you can never take the military man out of a man. So he'll probably go, yes, sir. And if he does, just laugh, because I will, everybody. I've tried. Paul, come and join me.
Sir. Yes, sir. How you doing?
See, I told you, everybody. There he goes. Yes, sir. How you doing? Paul, before we get into the books, can you tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, your family, and why at this stage of your life you've turned to writing?
Well, yes, sir. I was born, like you said, I was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I have 5 siblings. I'm the oldest male. I'm married, been married 16 years to Candace, 2 sons, Justin and Jordan, and my beautiful, wonderful little goddaughter, Brentley. And I just have a passion for writing now. I just love writing.
So before we actually, get into the books, everyone, we're going to be talking about 4 of Paul's books. They're going to be Waking Up, Jake's Story Part 1 and Part 2. So there are 2 books. Living Life, Poems to Live By. And then his latest book, Just When You Thought You Knew. So let's start with Waking Up, Jake's Story Part 1, which you put out some time ago, and it was re-edited in September 2022. Now, there are, technically speaking, 11 chapters. But for me, everybody, when you look at the book, I'm thinking, are they chapters or are they acts? Acts in this, a play, the scenes. So you'll hear me referring to them as acts, and Paul will probably say chapters. There you go. So, because when you look at the book, everybody, the story of Jake really it's a play. And I think you'll find out from Paul why it's originally written like that and why he's written the whole book in the style that he has. Now, there are many twists and turns here, everybody, as there should be in a good book. Now, Paul, you felt that the best chapters, acts for us to look at, to talk about, to reflect the overall concept of this book, was chapter 1, Act 1, everyone, the birth of Jake, Jake, chapter 3, and Jake the man, chapter 4. So let's go to Act 1, chapter 1, Paul. Sorry, we'll be running this throughout the whole podcast, everybody. The birth of Jake. Firstly, I need to ask you, why have you set the book out in this way, this fashion? You know, it's like a so-called play format. And why the characters, Jacob, Moore, Boss, Mr. Ellie, and Miss Esther, who dominate the scenes here? And why the opening storyline?
Yes, sir. First off, Jake was originally supposed to be a play. I was writing a play, and then I thought, well, I just started writing. I wrote it in book form instead of a play form. And the characters themselves, before you have Jake, you have to have Jacob. Before you have, Jake, you have to have Mark. So I had to introduce his mother and father instead of just jumping straight into Jake. I didn't want anybody to say, okay, where did Jake come from? What about, his background, this, that. So I had to introduce his mother and father and how his father started working, where he was working, the boss. He played a big part of the first chapter also, because the way it was written like in the Jim Crow era, how they didn't take care of the blacks. The blacks worked really hard on plantation-like farms, and the boss took care of them for his housing and everything else. And then the neighborhood, Mr. Eli, Miss Esther, it was a community. They worked together. The family, the blacks and stuff, they worked together in order to get things done, to have things move around and stuff.
When I look at the chapter Jake, here we have the characters Jake, Nikki, Clyde, Cleo, and young lady. What strikes me here is the style of language that you use, Paul. And it suggests to me that it's Black African American characteristics, possibly going back to the mid-20th century. So why this methodology and why the storyline with these characters?
Yes, sir. The language was because you got to think about it. It started off in the South of the United States, and English was broken. And when Jake finally did meet somebody who spoke correct English, he thought she talked funny. And he asked her to learn him how to speak, and she said, well, I can't learn you, I can teach you. But that's why the English was so broken, because they would never talk proper English. They just spoke the way they heard their ancestors and everybody else speak.
So why the storyline here?
The storyline about Jake meeting Nikki and all that, because once he left his farm, he came to a big city, and I wanted him to meet somebody that wasn't good for him. But at the same time, it shows how Jake's character is. Jake was a strong, handsome man like myself.
Well, I'll let the listeners and the audience make that judgment, everyone.
Jake was strong and handsome, but he had low self-esteem. And when a man has low self-esteem, it could take any woman or any person to manipulate him. And that was what's going on in his life at that time. I'm not going to say too much on it because I want you to read it and see what's going on in there.
When you look, everybody, at the opening gambit, which is in italics, everyone here, I'm going to quote it. Jake met a young, what you might or might not call a lady. I'll let you decide for yourselves there. She was the type you definitely wouldn't write a letter home to your mother about. She even made Faye appear, Faye is one of the characters in the book, a saint. And Faye ain't no saint, everyone. So the plot, in this chapter really starts to thicken, it starts to build, and it starts to twist. Have you done this way to engage with the readers here?
Yes, sir. I never want you to think you know what's going to happen next. Because just as soon as you start thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen next, it twists. And then you say, oh, I didn't see that coming. I have so many readers that have read this book, and they come back to me and say, man, they get upset with me first off because they think one thing's going to happen. I tell you, keep reading. So once they keep reading, they say, man, why you do that? Why you do that? I said, well, that's what it's for.
Absolutely. You've got to keep the readers turning those pages, everyone.
Yes, sir.
See, I told you he'll say yes, sir, throughout the whole of the interview. I give up. Yes. Now, Paul, in Jake the Man, this is chapter 4, everybody. Why are you telling us about the story of Cleo here? What happened to her when she was a young girl? And the story of Nikki, plus Jake's reactions. The scenes can be viewed as risque, carnal. So when I read them, I was thinking, what is Paul trying to say here? So what are you trying to say here, Paul? And why is this a significant scene for you to extol the virtues of your book? Because this is one of the chapters you said you wanted to talk about. Why?
Well, first you have to look at Jake. Yeah. Because that right there lets you know his personality, where he comes from, how he thinks, how he feels. Because I can't tell you what all went down with what happened to Cleo or Nikki because you had to read the book yourself. But the events that happened in their lives, it could have turned a normal person off. It could have made them reject her or whatever, reject them. But no, it made Jake feelings seem stronger, and he's very supportive. And what happened to Cleo is that she had to overcome some things.
She did.
In her life.
Yeah.
And I feel like every one of us have things we have to overcome. And it shouldn't stop us, because if you buy the book, you read the book, you find out exactly how Cleo has moved on with her life, how things have happened in her life and all that. And then you read how Nikki is, because she has a very terrible past also, troubled past, but she's taking it to a different level. So people handle adversities different.
Yeah.
And you'll see that once you get the book and read it.
It's two different girls reacting to different things in their lives in a different way.
Yes, sir.
Paul, let's go to the second book in the series, Waking Up. Why did you feel it was important to write the second book, Waking Up, Jake's Story Part 2? Did you feel that there was unfinished business to talk about? Or was this people who read the first book and said, you need to write more because we want to know what's happened to Jake? Or was it a bit of both? And why did you just do it in one block, one scene, one act, everyone?
Well, Jake, once people read the first book, they kept asking me, what happened? What happened? What Jake going to do next? What happened to Jake? Why you stop here? Why this happened? Why that? So I felt compelled to continue to write on that part. But then once I started writing, I said, Jake does have a lot more to tell. He has a lot more. And the reason I didn't break it down in sections is because this is Jake's life. This is not different sections of his life. This is his life. So I didn't break it down into chapters or acts. This is his life now. This is life. And so I didn't feel a need to put chapters or this or that or this in there because all of it is Jake. It's Jake.
So, I mean, the storyline here and the new characters. Jake is, here sporting a young man, Joseph, who was living on the streets. He's setting him up with new clothes. He's setting him up with accommodation. He's giving him some money. He's finding him a job. This is what the story is about here. Plus, it's also about Jake's own relationship with Joan. But what intrigues me the most here is why this story of Joseph. This has really got me going here.
Well, we all have a purpose in our life. And it could be to a people, a person, or something like that. And Jake always knew that something was in his life. So he had a purpose in his life. And it was revealed to him in a dream when he was praying, of course. And this character came, he didn't know what the purpose was, but once he met him, he knew. I can't say too much because I want everybody to read it. But at the same time, Jake felt compelled to help him. I'll put it that way. He felt compelled to help him. And Jake had to come back to his senses after what happened to him before. I don't want to say too much because it's just like a good movie. If I say too much, you don't want to watch it.
Exactly. Read the book, everyone. It's worth a read, believe you me. Now, Paul, the next book we're going to look at is you reverting back to poetry, a genre that you embraced with a passion. The book is Living Life, and you've set the boundaries here by describing all these poems as poems to live by. You divide the poems into 5 categories: matters of the soul, heart, spirit, life, and just matters. What's the purpose of grouping the poems under these headings? And where did you get your ideas for each of the poems? Do they derive from what you see in life, what you observe, what you experience? Where do they come from? And why the groupings?
Living Life, Poems to Live By, basically, the poems are a part of me, a part of other people, the things I feel. When I look at people, I can feel things, I feel them. Like, for instance, Smile, the poem Smile itself. I saw this young lady, I said, she needs to smile. Because I didn't tell her that, of course, because people think it's a pickup line. But I said she needs to smile because her smile could change the way a lot of people feel. Just like if you frown, you can bring other people down. But it's not going to change the world. But at the same time, it could change one person. A smile could change a lot of things. You could walk in a room and smile and brighten that whole room up. But at the same time...
And of course that... And of course, that little chapter or that little poem is in the Matters of the Soul, everyone. Now, for me, Paul, the poems Emptiness and Private Prison under Matters of the Soul and Smile under Matters of the Heart. So I do correct myself here because I believe I said Smile, everybody, is under Matters of the Soul. It's not. It's under Matters of the Heart. I've corrected myself.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Really stood out. And what I want to do here is I'm going to read Emptiness, everyone, so that you can get a flavour of what Paul's poetry sounds like. And then I'm going to ask Paul to say what was behind this poem. So this is the poem Emptiness, and it's under Matters of the Soul in the book. Emptiness. If you look into my mind, what would you see? A garden, a yard, or maybe a tree? When you look into my eyes, is it a joyful tear? Or are they just full of fear? When you look at my lips, do they speak words that you can trust? Or do they just speak out of lust? We all play little games, but are we really the same? We all have a role to play, and that role will decide if we are here to stay. When the end comes and the truth is told, where will there be a place for your soul? Very endearing, isn't it? Why that poem?
Emptiness is basically talking about a relationship. You might ask, why emptiness? Well, when you look at a person, if you look at a person, you hear a person, you feel a person, you look, when they're speaking, you find out what's up here, what's in their mind. Is it a garden which blooms and productive? A yard which is could be just plain, or a tree that's strong and bold. So emptiness is more of a relationship. My eyes, are they full of fear, or is it just a joyful tear? Is it tears? When I talk to you, is it lust, or are they words you can trust? And then at the end, it's your relationship with Christ. Am I going to stay, or do I have a place for my soul when I leave here? Yes, we have a place, but you want the right place. But
yeah, whether you turn right
empty.
or left.
Yes, sir. That's emptiness.
It's brilliant by everybody. And a lot of the poems are like that. There are a lot of poems, as I said, under those 5 headings. And smile is on a matter of the heart, everyone, not the soul. Now, Paul, the 4th and last book we're going to talk about in this podcast is your latest book, which you've published this year. There are 23 chapters in this book, which you state as being stories of life. And there is one chapter, which is a collection of stories within a story. Now, we're not going to read all the stories, everybody, because we'll be here forever and a day. And that's not the purpose of the podcast. And the idea is to give you a flavour. And if you're interested, you go buy the books. But we are going to concentrate on 4 of these stories, which both myself and Paul have agreed are the best stories that reflect this wonderful new book of his. So let's go to the first highlighted story, Paul. In This City. Why this story of John, an old farmer from out of town, coming to a city he sees as a place of turmoil and depression. He's looking for a wife. But if he'd looked back home, he would have found one there. Why the story?
Sir. We all know the old adage, the grass is greener on the other side. But once you get over there, you find out it's artificial turf. So excuse me. So John thought he would have to go to the city, which is filled with crime, turmoil, and depression. It's an over exaggeration, of course, but that's how he feels. That's how he sees it. So he feel like he need to go there to find the woman of his dreams. But once he gets there, he realizes, and he goes back home and realizes that what he wanted and what he needed was right down the street from him. This is an old love story. You always think that the one across the fence is better than what you have inside the fence.
Yeah, it's very true. And it's not always the case, everyone.
No, sir, not always.
It isn't. Now,
See,
Paul,
I didn't say yes, sir. I said no, sir.
check him out, everyone. Now, Paul, I like the stories of David's dream and vanity. Now, David's dream is about a message he received from the Lord. And vanity, here we have a completely different character. The character is Carl. Carl is a womanizing narcissist whose life is all about him. Everything is about him. Now, these are 2 very simple but effective stories which strongly advocate the diverse stories in this book. So why these 2 characters and why these very contrasting plots?
Well, with David, it's David go to show you that The Lord can call you to do different things. And we look for the miraculous things when he calls us to do things. We look for something where we're like a drum major leading the band. You know, we up in the pulpit. We're the big time TV minister or something. We look for the big things. But sometimes it's what you're doing right now. It's just keep doing what you're doing, because you never know the lives that you're touching that the Lord have plans for. So that's what David did. He thought he had to do so much. He didn't realize that the things he was doing was exactly what God wanted him to do at that time. And then when we get to Carl, he thought his body, his looks, his car, his job, he thought that was his life. I mean, that made him. But then an event happened where he messed up his hand and he was not able to work out. So from that point on, it destroyed him. It destroyed his working out. And when it destroyed his working out, it destroyed his physique. When it destroyed his physique, his looks started going down. And then his mentality started going down. So he went down. So it go to show you that your mentality, it doesn't come, your body does not make you. Your car does not make you. Your looks, they don't make you. What make you is what you feel about yourself and how you carry yourself, how you care about others. Carl cared about no one but himself. And that would destroy him.
Mm. And there are lots of other stories, everyone, similar to those. But Paul, when we discussed what areas both you and I felt best reflected the overall concept and purpose contained within the pages of this magnificent book of yours, you chose Cyrus's love letters, which is towards the end of the book, everybody. So why this story as opposed to, say, Mooka's story?
Cyrus's love letter is about passion, the love that a person has inside of them, and they express it to others. I've put Cyrus's love letter on Facebook. I recited it and got over 1,000 some views, 1,000 some likes, because so many people do have that passion in them. So many people have the passion, but they don't know how to express it. I had one review on Amazon where one guy said he suggests you recite passion or read passion to your loved one because it has that much. Oh, come on now. So it's just that that's what Cyrus's love letter is about, passion. And then when you get to Mooka's story is about this man. He was a full man. He had his family, he had everything going on, but then all of a sudden he became a slave. But he never gave up the hopes and dreams of becoming a free man, a whole man again, which is also passion. So both are passionate poems, but one is passion for as love and desire. The other is passion for hopes and dreams.
There you go. Now, Paul, what's next? With regards to your writing, any more books coming down the line?
Yes, sir. Right now, I'm working on a children's book, probably for the age between 6 and maybe 12. And it's probably my hardest book because I have to tone down the way I think. Because as you see, I'm a very realist. And I have to tone it down some, but it's still going to be real. Don't get me wrong. I'm still going to be a realist, but I have to tone it down some. And I might come up with Jake Part 3. I have thoughts about it because I left it. If you read Part 2, you see that I left it where I could add Part 3 to it. Depending on the feedback I get on Part 2. If I get anything like the feedback I got on Part 1, Part 3 is coming. But right now I have that on the shelf. So I'm working on that. But the children's book I'm working on, hopefully, I have it out 2024. Hopefully, if not, be early 2025.
I think he's got a little bit of wriggle room, everyone, for book 3 in Waking Up Jake. That's my opinion. Who do you see as your markets for your books, Jake? Sorry, Paul. I'm going to call you Jake now.
Well, I said he was handsome and built like me.
Oh, get over yourself.
But the market for Jake, it could be anyone from teenager to adult, because Jake life itself, it reflects on poverty, it reflects on gain, it reflects on passion, emotions. It has a big reflection. It has a lot of reflections. So Jake could be from teenager on up, you know.
There you go. And your latest book, again, the same sort of market or for a little bit older?
I feel like same market, because today's teenagers are 20 years old now. But
going on 30?
Yes, sir. But I feel that living just when you thought you knew will help a lot of teenagers. And so many, because some of the stories in there, for instance, like Oh Sheila, you know, where
now that's the stories in a stories chapter, everyone.
Yes, sir.
A lot of little characters there. Read it.
Where this young girl will listen to this older woman, and so many teenagers today don't do that.
No,
which they need to do, because there's a lot of wisdom in older people.
Oh yeah, but when you were a teenager, you know, did you listen to your mom, or did you just say, "Oh, do you know what? Yeah," and she was right in the end?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, see.
But what we did do, we listened to the people in the neighborhood, because if you didn't, and you went back home before you made it home, they had already called your mom.
Yeah, and she was on the door. She was on the porch door saying,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Paul, where can people get your books from?
Right now, you can get them from my website, which is www.pauljonesthewriter.com. You can get them from Trafford Publishing, Amazon. You can order from Barnes & Noble. You can even order from Walmart.
Thank you very much, Paul Jones. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to interview you for the second time. And I hope we'll do lots more interviews when more books come out. I simply say to you all, go and have a look at his books, everybody. Not just the ones that we've talked about in this podcast, but the ones we've talked about in previous podcasts. And enjoy his books. And I simply say, Paul Jones, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And he has to end on that one, doesn't he? Yes, sir. I'm JT Crowley. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you are in the world. Until next time, stay safe.